This is Ashwarya, and we are doing an FU12 Life Narrative interview with participant 3329. Today's date is November 7th, 2017. This is an interview about the story of your life. Our purpose in these interviews is to get to know you better and to catalog people's life stories. Please note there are no right or wrong answers to my questions. Instead, your task is to simply tell me about some of the most important things that have happened to you in your life and how you imagine your life developing in the future. I will guide you through the interview so we finish in about an hour to an hour and a half. Since our interview is beginning at 9:38, we will try to complete this interview by 10:38 or 11:08. I think that you will enjoy this interview. Most people do. I should also let you know that for the sake of research, I need to read the questions to you exactly as they were written. It is not a test in any way, but we want to be consistent in the way we ask questions. I'm also not allowed to provide a lot of feedback or response to what you say, as I do not want to influence your story. We want to hear your life story from your perspective without being influenced by me at all. So please don't worry if I do not seem very responsive. I'm simply trying to avoid influencing the way in which you tell your story. You may also see me writing something down every now and then. I'm not evaluating you at all. I'm simply making notes of the parts of the life that you mentioned. Some of the questions are long and have multiple parts, so I'm happy to repeat anything that you want. Please feel free to ask. So, let's get started. So, I would like you to begin thinking about your life since the age of 18 as if it were a book. Imagine that each major period or aspect of your life represents a chapter in this book. So you may have 2 to 5 chapters. Please provide me with the title for each chapter and then briefly describe what each chapter is about. We will want to spend about 10 minutes on this first section, so please keep your descriptions of the chapters brief. What would you like to title your first chapter?
And I'm starting at age 18.
Mm-hmm.
I guess just growing up and developing. And developing. So I'm talk about. So after I graduated from high school, when I was in high school, I didn't really plan on going to college. I didn't know really what I wanted to do. I was not forced, but told at the time that I was in high school I had to take some secretarial courses, so I did, which I absolutely hated, and didn't do well at all. And so I figured I am not doing this for a living, or when I get out of school I'm never going to find a job doing this, because I just couldn't stand doing it. So I decided at the last moment in high school that I would go to college. Of course, I had no preparation. I took no high school classes that would point me in that direction. I just kind of wasted my time in high school taking art and home economics and nothing of any value that would point me into the college direction. But I went ahead and went anyway to a junior college, which was kind of not hard. I had no savings, so I had to work, and it was cheap then to go, so I was able to save my money and go. I met some really good friends there, though, so it was really very much value. So I went 2 years to junior college and then went on to UMSO for 2 more years and graduated with a degree in education with a minor in psychology. So then I went to got a job in teaching, which I don't know why I just didn't, wasn't a good fit, but I taught school for a year in the parochial school systems. I'm Catholic, so that made sense, but I liked working with the kids and stuff, but I guess the structure of the school or something just didn't quite work. And it might have been the school, because each school operates a little differently, and the principal of the school was quite rigid in her thinking and really didn't want to go outside the confines of how she felt things should be done. So I had a kid, I remember, in math. They did switch in the upper grades. I had one of the upper grades, and they switched the basic subjects, and he was like brilliant. And 5th grade math he was like in high school math by that time, which I couldn't even probably do some of the stuff. And so I was kind of trying to challenge him, and she didn't want me to do that. And so anyway, after my first year, I decided I really wanted to do something else, and went on to get a job in a, excuse me, in a settlement house, and not too far from here in the city's near north side, which worked out perfect. It really combined my love of the education part of it and working with young people, as well as some of the psychology and sociology classes I took, and it was really nice. I stayed there for quite a very long time, so I did a lot of different things with that particular job. So it took me a while to kind of get to where I went, but it worked out nice. So I was happy then at the end, even though the journey too wasn't always exactly what I expected. I was happy at the end of my developing and growing through that process of going to school and ending up in the career that I chose, even though I changed later in life. But I was there about 25 years, I guess. And even though it changed too, the settlement house process changed, and they merged, unmerged, and did a lot of different things with United Way Agency. My focus still was always within the youth development part, and I moved up in the agency and formed a lot of different types of programs and did a lot of different types of things, but always with the young people, and still have maintained my contact with some of the people that I knew when they were. One girl I still do some things for because she was developmentally disabled, and I guess I knew her when she was about 6, and she's probably now, I don't know, in her 40s. I still take care of some of her financial stuff with the help of her mother, and a couple other people who are closer to my age now, even though they were young people. You know, when I started, they were probably 10, 12, and, you know, now married and have kids of their own and grandkids of their own, but we still go out to lunch and see each other socially and stuff. So I really did enjoy that job. Although there were times, you know, with all jobs, you're like, oh, I can't wait to get out of here. Or ready to leave. It was something of value to me in my life. So that was a good position.
Mm-hmm. What would you like to title your next chapter?
So I guess when I did leave that job, even though I was a young, I guess my next chapter would be, well, I'm not very creative with that kind of titling stuff. I guess my next chapter would be more family, and I guess just leave it at family. So even though I was at the settlement house for a long time, I really wasn't in any, well, towards the end there I was in a relationship, but I wasn't married. Did I get married then? Yeah, I did, because one of our board members was a minister at a Lutheran church right down the street. My husband is also Catholic, but he was divorced, so you can't get married in the Catholic church if you're divorced. But we wanted to get married in a church, and he was a Lutheran minister. He was president of my youth board, so he married us in his church. And he had 2 children that were, I guess at the time, like 9 and, no, let's see, more like 11 and 12, 9 and 12, something like that. So, you know, that age where they're involved in every little sport and all kinds of activities going on. And my mother was also struggling with trying to identify some kind of thing that was going on with her, some kind of illness. They were bouncing her back and forth with this diagnosis and that diagnosis, and then no, we think it's this, we think it's that, and running to and fro from different doctors, and just kind of confusing, never quite solving anything, and continuing to deteriorate. So spending more time with her and my dad, trying to figure out what was going on and kind of helping them out. I have 3 sisters, so we started kind of getting together and dividing up the chores in the house, so one of us could be there taking care of cleaning, and we would do this, you would do that, taking care of finances or whatever. So just helping them out a little more so they wouldn't have to be focusing on all that kind of stuff. So kind of organizing things to help them out. So we're just concentrating on, my husband, the kids, and my mother. And then I had an opportunity. She was then diagnosed with ALS, which is Lou Gehrig's disease. So, and then her diagnosis was confirmed, not by traveling to, I think it was the Mayo Clinic. No, not the Mayo Clinic, Northwestern University. She didn't travel there, but they confirmed it by her tests and stuff. So I became active in the ALS Association, which was just a brand new organization in St. Louis at the time. And then I became more involved in the ALS Association. They decided they wanted to hire an executive director because it was all volunteer. So I applied for that position, and then I left the Sullivan House and went to work for the ALS Association. And I was there for about 25 years too. So those were really my 2 big jobs during my work history, other than prior to that, part-time jobs when I was going to school. My mom eventually did not have ALS, but it took them another, 10 or 15 years to change her diagnosis, because with ALS you die 2 to 5 years after diagnosis for the most part, and she lived a long time with her disease, although it progressed very slowly, but she was completely incapacitated at the end of her life. So it looked so much like the disease, so that's why they were all very confused. And the doctor that confirmed her diagnosis at Northwestern did move here to Washington University, as a matter of fact, at the neuromuscular clinic, and I think he's still here. When he came here, then he kept seeing her, and then he kept going, I don't think you have this. And he did some more tests and changed her diagnosis to a kind of a sister disease, but it didn't involve the nerves, just all the muscles. So. But he continued to see her throughout the course of her life until she passed away she had inclusion body myositis, I think is what they called it. So, but during all that time, it was just a lot of time with, the kids. And then, of course, she needed more and more care, so luckily I have 3 sisters. Luckily we're a real close family. Everybody willing, and families, husbands and kids were all willing to, I don't want to say, well, the husbands pitch in, but, if you had to be gone for a whole weekend or something, nobody complained or crabbed about it or gave you a hard time, you just did it. So we would take care of weekends, and then we had to hire people during the week to help out my mom and dad, but a lot of times I had to leave work, or one of my sisters. My job, being a not-for-profit, you have a little bit more flexibility. I could go in late or stay late or leave during the day and then come back. I was the executive director, so I still had a little more flexibility with that too. I can make my own hours, and so that worked out better. It just gave me more time to be available to them. My dad was diagnosed with Parkinson's, so that kind of limited what he could do also. And then when they couldn't drive and all that, but, with the family, we covered all that, but that took long, over a course of, years, took a long time. But it all worked out in the end, but most of that focus in that time was on them and, just on people growing up and running to games and doing this and doing that. Just general life, the family,
Would you like to add another chapter?
Let's see. I guess also in connection to that would be work with the ALS Association. That was a professional chapter, or
Is that the third chapter?
yeah. Because that work really was important to me. We grew the organization from nothing, just a beginning volunteer organization with no staff. I wasn't the first staff person hired because they had kind of an office person to begin with, and then hired a social worker that worked on a contractual basis. And then I came in as the executive director, which sounds more than what it was in the beginning, because it was just a teeny organization. So being executive director, and there was really no staff other than these two contract people. It wasn't like we were executive director of a larger organization. But the organization grew, and now today it's a pretty large organization with a fair amount of staff. We covered half of Missouri and half of Illinois, so had a large service area. And the population of ALS patients was really underserved. The disease isn't as rare as people think it is because people die so quickly, so you don't have large numbers of people at any given time because they are diagnosed and pass away so fast. But we found as we grew and as we did more marketing and provided more services that the need was really great. So it was nice to be a part of that. My family is very generous with their time. We're not wealthy by any means. What they could do, but just everybody would chip in and help with all kinds of fundraising activities and just helping out with the patients and support groups and other families as well, all the other patients' families. It was really a nice group in the beginning as people joined together to get the organization going and get it to the stage it is now. So that was really nice to be a part of that and to help that grow. And they're now a United Way agency, so it was nice to be a part of that activity too. You felt like you made a contribution to something worthwhile, and then received benefits from it. At the time, from my mother, she was able to receive benefits from that. And it was good for her to participate in activities and develop some friendships with people who were going through the same, even though she ended up not having ALS. Her symptoms were the same, and her frustrations and limitations, being in the wheelchair, not being able to use her arms, and just not being able to walk, and all those aggravations and frustrations that we couldn't always understand, but other patients could. So those relationships and stuff was really good for her, and participation was good for her, and learning about all the equipment and all that. Development, that was always good. So, and just reaching out and developing all that with new people, which I still keep in contact with some of those families too, just through Facebook and seeing them here and there about in the communities. It's nice. And one person I met through ALS, her sister was diagnosed with the disease, and we've become really close friends and see each other a lot now all the time. So you develop all those nice relationships. So even though the disease itself is horrible, the rest of it is all really good. So that was, I appreciated that good learning experience too, and just being a part of that.
Would you like to do another chapter?
I guess retirement. Then I retired. I retired a little early. Instead of normally you'd retire at 65, at least in my age group during that time. But I retired about 62. I did and I didn't want to retire. Unfortunately, at the time, when my parents were both doing poorly, I working with the board, and I was at the ALS Association, decided to bring in a different executive director. They wanted more of a fundraising person. I'm not a fundraiser. I'm more of an operations person and hands-on doing things, not raising money. And so I kind of stepped aside from the executive director's position, and I needed to spend more time with my parents, especially my mother. She just needed more care. She just was completely incapacitated then, so she couldn't, she had to be transferred out of bed. She had to be fed. It was just completely, and my father with the Parkinson's, he couldn't do it, and it was just more, I still had more flexibility than my other sisters. They were in companies, they just couldn't leave when something happened. They just couldn't say, I got to run home. It just wasn't possible. But I could do that. They allowed me to do that. So I took a different position in the agency. I decided to only work 4 days a week. They gave me an extra day that I could spend with them. My husband was working a weird job between being laid off at Boeing. He was at the casino, and his off days were Sunday and Monday. So I could take off Monday too, and at least we would have some time together. And so it all worked out better to be that way. But the executive director that they had at the time, they didn't, the board didn't make the best choice, I guess I could say. And after a number of years, it's like, okay, I just can't work for this person any longer, and I'm going to retire, because I could retire. So I told my board person that I was leaving really because of the person that they hired, and they really need to deal with it. But I'm not saying this because I want you to, it's not like a threat. I'm going to leave if you don't do this, I'm leaving, period. But you better deal with this, because the rest of your staff is going to be bailing on you too. And they did. After I left, about 2 months later, they did get rid of him and hire somebody new. They just kept turning a blind eye to what he was not working, was not doing anything. So I left a little earlier than I wanted to, but I really didn't regret it, although, the little extra money would always help in retirement, but a little bit here and there really wouldn't matter. So I was retired for I'm still retired. I never did go back to work. I hope I don't have to. I love being retired. But I was probably retired 5 years, maybe 6 years before my husband retired. So that was nice too, being just kind of doing what you want to do when you want to do it kind of thing, not having to have to worry about anybody else. I have plenty of things. I've always been involved in stuff. I always think it's important, coming from the non-for-profit community, that you continue to give back. So I did continue to volunteer at our local church, the church I belong to. Not right now, I don't belong to it. Since we moved, we're in the process of changing churches. We haven't completely left our other church and registered at a new church, but we're going to have to do it because I'm not going to keep driving as far to keep going back. But, I volunteered at the school, tutoring and different things like that, because I just think that's important. And I have hobbies and that kind of stuff. And my niece just had a baby. Well, she's about 16, 18 months old now, so we babysit once a week for her. And so there's plenty of stuff to do, so I don't ever get bored. In fact, I'm quit. I need my own days. Leave me alone. Quit asking me to do stuff. Yeah. So it's been good. My husband's health hasn't been the best, so that's been kind of hard not to be able to do some things that we want to do because of his situation. But it's been good. Good otherwise, so it's nice.
Okay, so let's go to the next question.
Okay.
Could you please describe a scene or a moment in your life that stands out as an especially positive experience? This might be the high point scene of your entire life, or else an especially positive or wonderful moment in your story. Please describe what happened, when and where it happened, who was involved, and what you were thinking and feeling. Please say a word or two about why you think this one was so good and what the scene may say about you as a person.
Especially positive. Boy, it's hard to think back. Especially positive. I don't know. I've had a good positive life. I've never really. I have a good parents, and my family's really close. My sisters, my mom's cousins and stuff. We see each other all the time. And
well, this is kind of asking like a specific event.
Event.
That stands out as like a high point.
The best memory, though. Let's see. One thing that I can think of that just kind of come to mind is when I turned 60. My sisters made me a scrapbook of my life, kind of thing that they put together. And we still celebrate everybody's birthday, so we were over at my youngest sister's house, and they gave it to me. So that was really, everybody, of course, was all here, and they just couldn't wait to, how they couldn't wait to you open it up and look through it. It was just really touching. And my mother had passed away right before that, I think. So it was just, and my dad had already passed away, so it was just us. But it was just really that they would go through all that trouble and get together and get all these pictures together, and then get people, friends and cousins, to write all these other letters and put them in the book. And got a letter from my mom before she died. And then it was just really touching. And I started to cry, and then my younger sister goes, "Yay, that's what I wanted." So that one, yeah, I can remember.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. So now thinking back on your entire life, could you identify a scene that stands out as a low point or even the lowest point in your life story? Even though this event is unpleasant, I would appreciate you providing as much detail as you can about it. What happened in the event, where and when it occurred, who's involved, and what you were thinking and feeling. Also, please say a word or two about why you think this particular moment was so bad and what the scene may say about you or your life.
Well, that's kind of hard, too. I'm not one to share a lot of information either, a lot of personal information, so that makes it a little harder.
Yeah.
So I guess I got married late in life, just because that's how things happen sometimes. And I lost a child, a baby, so that would be the low point.
I'm sorry.
And, made you feel sad.
What were your thoughts and feelings during?
I was just sad about the whole thing, and just disappointed that I wouldn't probably then have children of my own, but happy that my husband had children who I love dearly, and they're part of the family, so missed what I wouldn't have, but grateful for what I do have. So.
Okay, thank you for sharing that with me. So now that we've done high point and low point. It may be possible to identify key moments that stand as turning points, episodes that mark an important change in you or your life story. Please identify a particular episode in your life story that you now see as a turning point. Again, for this event, please describe what happened, where and when it happened, who was involved, and what you were thinking and feeling. Also, please say a word or two about what you think this event says about you as a person or about your life.
Well, I think one of the turning points was when my mother was diagnosed with, even though she didn't have ALS, what she had was just as bad. So, and when we had to provide so much care for her. So that was really hard. I know it was terrible for her because she had to give up so much. What people do for themselves what they want to do. They don't want other people to have to brush their teeth and comb their hair and change their clothes, Especially your children. You don't want your children to have to do that for you. And as a child, not a small child, but,
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to do that for your parents, but you do. I always say I just stepped outside of myself and I just did what she needed to be done. And then when it was all over with, then I was her child again,
Mm-hmm.
That was my mother. But while I was doing it, it was like I wasn't, it was like a stranger or something, because some of it was really personal care, and you just, in order to do it and to be right about it, I just couldn't. I just kind of just have to step out on myself. It wouldn't be something I wouldn't necessarily do for strangers. So people that work in the healthcare industry are very much unappreciated and underpaid in those home care homes and stuff. Oh my God! Just to do that for people that they don't even know and aren't related to or something takes a lot to me to do it properly, I guess.
Mm.
But then she also shared a lot of information at that time. My mother also didn't really talk. She would tell you things, and just your normal relationship you have with your parents is. But in those kind of situations, you just kind of you grow a little closer in a different sort of way. And then she would just kind of share more things that she might not have ever talked about before. And she didn't come from a real large family, but in those days, families were larger than they are now, or even when I only have 3 sisters. But she came from a family of 9, which wasn't quite that big. My dad came from a family of 15, so, but there were larger families at that time. Her mother died when she was, I think, 9, and her youngest sister, who's the only one that's now still living, was a baby. So then she had to go live with an aunt because the kids couldn't care for her. And her father died when she was about 19 or so. But the sisters and brothers were real close. They maintained a real close relationship. And they're all really positive people, so I learned a lot from my mother on how to overcome all the adversities that she faced, which we didn't even know about really growing up and not having anybody to teach her how to cook or how to do this. She'd always say, I hope that this turned out okay. I never had anybody show me how to cook anything. And she was a good cook. She canned her own fruits and vegetables and stuff, and she just taught herself on how to do all that kind of stuff. But she shared all this with us, or I don't know if she did with my other sisters, but we talk about that kind of stuff with my sisters. Because then she couldn't do anything. She couldn't do all those things anymore. She couldn't do anything. So she'd talk about that kind of stuff, but she never, she just accepted the fact that that's just what it was, and it was okay. She never got mad or bitter or resentful or depressed or angry about it at all. It just, so, we got to remember that. I always tell my sisters, I said, when something happens to us, we got to remember how Mom handled it, so we got to be the same way.
Mm. Yeah.
So.
Okay, so thank you again. Now that we've covered a high point, low point, and tuning point, I'm going to ask you to concentrate on another event that stands out to you strongly in your story. This could be a key event or a critical incident, just a significant episode in the past, set in a particular time and place. Could you please describe this critical event for me?
So I'm going to say that again.
So it's any event that stands out significantly in your story. It's just a specific happening, like, in your past.
Specific happening in the past.
Something that just stands out to you.
This reminds me when I took a class where we had to give a speech about something that happened to us in childhood or something, and I'm like, what happened to me in childhood? I struggled to think of something. Significant happening in the past. I don't know, just regular day-to-day kind of stuff.
It's okay, we can move on if you'd like to.
Okay, yeah, I can't. Now, maybe I'll think of something.
Okay. So, looking back over your entire life, could you identify a scene or period in your life, including the present time, where you confronted a major health problem? Please describe what the health problem is or was and how it developed, and if relevant, please discuss any experience you had with the healthcare system regarding this crisis. In addition, please talk about how you coped with the problem and what impact this health problem had on you in your life story.
Well, for the most part, I've been pretty healthy, but I did have, when I worked in the settlement house, and years ago, I think they required you to get a TB test every year, like for school, but there in the near North Side, we had to get a TB test every year, and one year I tested positive, so with the little time test. So I had to go get the chest x-ray, which I had TB, which I was just like shocked that how could I be fine one year and now all of a sudden I have TB. And I mean, you never even heard of TB, but there was some incidences in that area where I worked, even though I wasn't really in touch with those people that had TB. So it was just, you weren't really ashamed or anything. I didn't do anything. But I had to tell all these people I worked with, because if they had health issues themselves, then they had to tell their doctors. They were working with someone who was identified, and I had an active TB. I had to be on medication for a year, and I had to be followed for 5 years after that. And, I guess I got scoring or something on my lungs. I had to put that on all my health stuff now for the rest of my life. And you wouldn't think it could have progressed that much. Nothing one year and a lot the next year, but it did. But the worst part of that was I felt kind of bad having to send all these people to their doctor, because I did work with a couple of people that had health issues that then had to go to their doctor and get all that taken care of. But my sister was pregnant, so this was and right around the holidays. So then she had to tell, her doctor. So then I couldn't see my sister till after the baby was born. So I couldn't be with the family at Christmas. I couldn't have Christmas with everybody. Had to be by myself. when I'm by myself, but not with them. And her, for some reason, her son was supposed to have been born in February, like at the beginning of February, and he wasn't born until the beginning of March. He looked like a month old when he was born. So I couldn't see her, and we see each other all the time. It's not like you don't see your family. I mean, our family, we just see each other all the time. So that was like 3 months I couldn't see her. Mm-hmm. And had to be real careful around the other people because they would see her, you know. So it was just awful. So really, I wasn't, never felt bad or anything. I had to be on medicine for a year. I couldn't drink. Not that I was a big drinker, but it was hard. I was in my 20s, so, you know, you'd go to parties. My one sister worked at a bank. They changed names so many times. It's Bank of America, but they were something else at that time. And they had a big employees bank club kind of thing where they would do things. It was all through the bank, but they would go like to Mizzou games. They'd rent a bus. The bank would do all this, you know. So I would be going with her to those kind of things. So I could never drink. But people were always kind of, here, have this, you know, and I'd have to pretend I was drinking, or, you know, we'd work out a little system, and because I didn't want to go into all this explanation that I have TB, I can't, you know. So I would just she and I'd take the drink, and then she would take the drink, and, you know, we'd switch off on something so I could look like I was drinking, and I was just drinking soda or white soda or water or something, and, you know, it was just a big pain, but it was aggravating, and so that was the biggest health thing that ever really occurred to me. And nothing ever has, you know, it cured, and now everything's fine. But I just have to report it all the time.
Yeah. Okay, so I appreciate you sharing that with me. So now I'd like you to think about a specific event or moment in your life in which you became aware of your ethnic or cultural background. Please provide as much detail as possible about this event. How has this event affected the way you think about your own cultural background or culture?
Well, I keep the history stuff for my family, so I think we even as young people, we always knew that my mother came from a German background and my father came from a French background. I grew up in Florissant, and there was some kind of separation of German and French there, so it was always they'd always make jokes about that they got married, that, you know, they wouldn't, you know, Frenchmen wouldn't marry the Germans, and there was the Catholic Church, the Sacred Heart and St. Ferdinand. They wouldn't, which sounds so strange now. Who would know you were from Sacred Heart or St. Ferdinand? But back then they did. You know, so even as young kids, we always knew that was going on. That part of it, just you know, we knew my dad was French, my mother was German, so they would, even if they got mad at each other, they'd call, you know, he'd say, "You're so stubborn," and she'd say something about whatever the French would be, I don't know. But not too long ago, one of my cousins on my dad's side of the family, we were talking, and she said her mother, who was the youngest, the baby in the family, always said there was Indian in their family. My father never said anything about that, but she traced some things back to this Chief Illini on the other side of the river in Illinois, to this princess or something. So now that's really got me intrigued, so I need to find out something about that there might be some Native American ancestry going on there. She said it was something like the 7th great grandmother or something was this Indian princess. So, so I think that's kind of interesting.
Yeah. Okay, let's go to the next question. So now looking back over your life story, could you identify the single person or group of people that had the greatest positive influence on your story? In other words, please identify the best character in your life story and describe this person, group, or organization's positive impact on your story.
Well, I've talked enough about my family to say that it would be my, I would say my mother's family, her sisters and brothers, and besides my parents, which I would think that would be natural for most people. I'm just unfortunate that my parents were good people and did a good job, I guess, of raising my sisters and I. But my mother's family, even though they lost their parents early, they just maintained really close ties, had family reunions every year, all lived close to each other. We could go to each other's houses. We just lived down the street from my one aunt and uncle and not too far from others, so they spent lots of time together. Friday nights, Saturday nights, we spent Thanksgivings with them and Christmases, traveling, just driving to each other's house and stuff. Growing up, my cousins were my friends. We all went to the same school. Some of us were in the same grade because there were so many of us. So we still see each other all the time, and we do things together. And they're your friends. I have 3 cousins that are my age in that family. So it's just so my aunts. You were with them a lot, so I would say they had the most influence on me, and other than my parents, of course. My aunts taught me how to sew even before I went to high school to learn how to sew. I was sewing it when I was about 10 years old. Taught me how to do things like that, and my uncle taught me how to drive. Not my parents. Just so I would say that extended family had the most influence on me.
So now looking back over your life story, could you identify the single person or group of people that had the greatest negative influence on your story? In other words, please identify the worst character in your life story. Please describe this person, group, or organization and the way in which he, she, or they had a negative impact on your story.
I won't say they had a negative impact because I think as a young person I always fought against that, if that makes any sense. But you know how grade school people can be to each other. And even I went to a parochial grade school, just to the grade school, not to a high school. I went to a regular high school, public high school, I guess I should say, but to a Catholic grade school. But there were kids in grade school that, I can still remember the negative, just the meanness, I guess you could say. And although I never quite gave in to all of that. And it's funny, because we had a 50th grade school reunion. And then after that, some of the women from the class, we go out to lunch and stuff, and some of those people go to lunch. It's just funny how people have changed and stuff. And, but they still have some of those traits. So they come to lunch and you can still see some of that meanness and kind of like, I'm better than you kind of attitude. But I remember that, but I don't let it, I can remember how it made me feel when I was a kid, but it's like I'd let it go. But as a kid, it does make you feel kind of bad.
Okay. So, in looking back over your love life, it may be possible to identify certain key moments that stand out as turning points. Episode that marked an important change in you or your story. Could you identify a particular episode in your love life that you now see as a turning point? If you cannot identify a turning point that stands out clearly, please describe some event in your love life wherein you went through some important change. The event you choose to describe may or may not involve your current romantic partner if you have one. Again, for this event, describe what happened, where and when it happened, who was involved, and what you were thinking and feeling. Also, please say a word or two about what this event says about you as a person or your life story.
Well, yeah, the event doesn't involve my current husband. It was somebody that I was with prior to him. I was in college. We went to the same high school, but I was a year older. Mm-hmm. I didn't even know him in high school, really, but met after high school. But it was during the Vietnam War time, and he went then. We dated, and then he went into the service, went to Vietnam. We still were together, though, during that time. Came home from his tour, but then decided if he went back, he had two brothers that were twins, and if he would go back and reinstate or re-up, and sign back up, then his brothers wouldn't have to serve, or they'd have to serve in the service, but they wouldn't be deployed to Vietnam. So he wanted to keep them from having to do that. So he went back. So when the second tour of Vietnam just really changed him. It was really, from his letters and just everything, was just very difficult. You could just tell. But so that was really tough. So when he came back the second time, we broke it off. It just was too, it wasn't the same person. So that was a really difficult time, and I think that was part of the reason why I took me a long time before I ever really got close again to another guy. So
yeah. Thank you for sharing that with me. So your first interview with us was in 2009, which was 8 years ago. Looking back over the past 8 years since your first interview with us, what were your hopes, dreams, and goals during that time, and do you believe that you've achieved them?
2009, I think that's when I retired. Or I was thinking about retiring, or maybe, so it was close around that time. Yeah, really things have changed since we moved just recently in February. Probably wouldn't have thought that I would move, but it was a good thing. So I am happy about that. I like where we've moved to, into a villa and out of the house, which was because of my husband's health. But I was resistant at first because I didn't want to leave my neighborhood, and I didn't want to leave my house. But it's worked out. It's a good thing. And my sister, who lived in South City, and they lived in a 2-story thing too, and her husband has Parkinson's and she has lupus. We wanted them out of there a long time ago, but they moved, like I said, across the street from us, which I'm so happy about because of their health conditions. Now they don't have all those issues with steps and yard and all that kind of thing, and her husband's not doing real well anyway, so it's good that they're real close at hand, and you can be there for them if they need anything, and them for us, but so far we've been fine. So that's a good thing. I didn't even see that coming, but so that's been good. So I think the only thing that I don't want to say I'm disappointed in, because I'm not really disappointed, but my husband's health is just not what I hoped it would be at this age, because so we haven't been able to travel maybe as much as I would like, but it's not like, oh no, I'm gonna have a fit or something over. It's just what it is. So we just do, and we now have a house payment, which we haven't had for a long time, so we have to curtail things anyway. So, but other than that, no major, I don't know, disappointments or things that aren't kind of the way we want them to go, and just have to pay a little bit more attention to our money because of the house payment. But we had planned our. We were moderate spenders anyway, so and we're fortunate enough to be able to think ahead and save enough money for our retirement. So I think that'll all be good. So
yeah. So your life story includes key chapters and scenes from your past, as you've described, but it also it also includes how you imagine your future. Could you describe what you see to be the next chapter in your life?
Well, I hope, I haven't really talked about our grandkids at all, but they're all just like growing like crazy, so I hope to see them have families of their own, at least have some, and be successful. 2 of them are already out of high school, so really growing up. And doing well, so I hope they, find what they're looking for and do well, and that we stay healthy, and we have property in outside of Farmington in a little lake development called Goose Creek on a lake. I hope we can still continue to keep going down there and maintain and take care of that. My one sister and my niece and my great niece, they love going down there, and with their help too, we should be able to take care of all the raking of leaves and maintaining all the grounds and stuff. So that's always good. That's always fun. And friends of my sister, who are really friends of ours too, and kind of distant relatives, they bought a lot across the way. And her daughter and husband, they're really helpful. So when we need strong bodies and young people, we can call on them and they come over and help us out, so that's good. So I hope to spend more time down there and watch Josie grow up, and my other niece. I think they're planning on a family, so that's fun. So, and the grandkids.
Yeah. Okay. So, next question. Lastly, I would like you to identify a life theme. Looking back over your entire life as a story with chapters and scenes, could you identify a central theme, message, or idea that runs throughout your life? If so, can you describe it?
Well, I hope, sometimes I can be a serious person. I hope my life hasn't been too serious. That, I haven't left the impression with people that I'm like always too serious. That it's been joyful, but that I've been, I've left something for, I've given more than I've taken, and I've taken care of my family. I'm the oldest, so I hope I've given to my sisters some wisdom or some left something for them to, respect me by and look up to me by, and left something for them, with my work in the not-for-profits, and given back more than I've taken.
Okay. Thank you. So that's the end of this portion of the interview. We really appreciate you sharing your story with us. By sharing your story, we've helped future generations better understand your life and what it was like, and we can improve people's lives in the future through research. Now that we've finished this part of the interview, I can be more responsive.